Good morning, members. Today I'm going to do a quick introductory video just talking about the beginnings of the fitting process. With us coming into the new season, I know a lot of people are going to be interested in getting new equipment. Not that it's necessary. For the last 6 years, I've played the same set of irons, and I get golf equipment pretty inexpensively. So don't think that you need to get new equipment, but when you are ready to look at getting new equipment, fitting is a very important part of that purchase. So the beginning of the fitting process for me starts with something that I call simple sizing. And if you think of the golf club as a tool for a job, we're going to use this tool to try and move the golf ball through the air or on the ground to get it as close to the hole as possible. The size and weight of that tool are very important. You think about using a hammer to knock in a nail versus using a sledgehammer to knock in a pin on a railroad track. You think about a small screwdriver for working on eyeglasses or a big screwdriver for screwing in a major bolt on a piece of equipment. Golf clubs are somewhat similar. Larger clubs are used for different jobs. But more specifically about sizing, let's talk about the size of the actual iron head. So if you look at a Callaway Big Bertha club, this is a large club head. It's thick on the bottom, it's got a lot of material in it, and the purpose of that is to make it more forgiving. If you look at something smaller, say an old-fashioned Titleist blade, look how much thinner and smaller the sole of that club is. If you think about it, these two clubs are going to move through the ground much differently. The thinner club will glide through the turf a little easier, versus the bigger club will tend to stall out as it hits the ground. Well, if you tend to hit behind the golf ball, a larger club that won't dig into the ground might make your miss a little bit more forgiving. And likewise, by spreading the weight out in the golf club, you can make the club more forgiving across the face. A blade like the thin Titleist club is meant for a player who's almost always going to hit the ball right in the center of the face, versus an amateur player who is still struggling to make solid contact on a lot of shots. A ball hit here, or maybe down on the bottom or in towards the heel a little bit, you're going to get a much more consistent flight and result from a larger club head. So why would any player choose to play a smaller club head? Well, smaller club heads can offer a little bit more control as far as distance if you hit the middle of the face. That's why you see guys on tour playing those. But beyond the size of the club head, let's talk about the weight and the length of the shaft. Now, a lot of people would simply say, well, the taller player needs taller golf clubs. Well, that may be true, but another thing that factors in is the length of the arms. You know, I'm a fairly tall guy, a little over 6'1", but I've got kind of T-Rex arms. So my clubs actually are a little longer, not because of my physical height, but because of how short my arms are relative to the size of my body. And the last thing I want to talk about today is the weight of the shaft of the golf club. And this is what you're going to feel as you're actually swinging the club. And if you swing, say, a driver shaft with no head on the end, it feels really light and you can just whip it around, versus the example I used earlier. If you're swinging a sledgehammer, you're going to need to move your whole body to try and control that much weight. So a club that's too light might be difficult for a stronger player to control, versus a club that's too heavy for someone who's not as strong or maybe is physically lighter in stature. Take a 10-year-old kid who can swing the club really fast. If you give him something heavy, he will lose control of his body just trying to control that golf club. So the simplest elements to talk about as you begin the fitting process are what type of club head you need for your skill level, how it moves through the ground and where you strike the golf ball, how long a shaft should be to fit a player's posture, arm length, and stance so they can stand comfortably and move the golf club, and then the weight of the golf club, heavy enough that they can feel it and control it, but not so heavy that they have to labor their body and use their athleticism to control the club rather than to create speed like you're supposed to. Now, the better the player gets, the more consistent their strike, the deeper we can dive into it. But for fitting a more amateur player, someone who's still shooting, around 100 when they play, just getting the simple sizing right can make a huge difference. After you do simple sizing, then you can move into things like aesthetics. Does it look good? Does it sound good? But make sure as you're looking at golf clubs, you let me or another fitter take a look at your stance and your swing, because we can get these simple sizing things right, which go a long way in helping you be more consistent.